In Project 3, we're going to take a look at how we can prepare a workbook for being distributed either among individuals within your organization or those that are outside your organization. And there may be times when you've added confidential information to a workbook, or maybe you've got other types of document properties or comments or things in your headers that you don't want others to necessarily look at. And so what we can do is run one of the features that Excel has to prepare that, kind of give you a heads up as to what's in that workbook that you may want to check to see if it needs to be removed before passing it and sharing it with others. And that particular feature is called the Document Inspector. And they talk about that at the bottom of page 278 and top of page 279. They actually show you the Document Inspector dialog box at the bottom of page 279, and we'll take a look at that in detail when we run this feature. In Project 3A, I've already opened the Cut Rate Pilot project report and have saved it as they've requested. And what we're going to do is examine the workbook for confidential information by first kind of looking at it. Typically you wouldn't do this because the Document Inspector would do it for you, and then you could go back and review it, but they want us to look at this first, and then we'll run the Document Inspector dialog box. So just a couple of things they're going to point out. We're going to go to the Properties area, which is under the File tab, and you can see the Properties information is over on the right hand side. And if we click on Advanced Properties under the Properties area, that'll bring up the dialog box that gives you some information, summary information, statistics, contents, custom. Some of these properties, again, not real sure that you'd want to leave those in there, especially under the value area here. You can read all the information in there, but there may be names in there that you don't necessarily want separated or shared with other individuals. So just a thought there, those are your properties. I'm going to cancel out that. Also, I'm going to go back to the Home tab and show you some of these comments. Notice a comment made by Francis Geddes here. It says, let's try to negotiate a better lease contract with Toyota. Again, you may not want to share that with other individuals. Another comment right here, this was high due to excessive mileage. We can mitigate this in the future via earlier returns. So, and a quick way to look at all your comments, I know there's only two, but if you go back to the Review tab, click Show All, that will display them all in one shot. You can get an easier view of what's going on. Alright, so we're going to let the Document Inspector actually look at the various elements of this workbook. And to get to the Document Inspector, we're going to go back to the File tab, and in the Check for Issues area, we're going to click on that particular button and have it inspect the document. And it'll ask if you want to save it. I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. And then once it's been saved, you can see all the different areas that it's going to check. Comments, the document properties, we were looking at all this before. Headers and footers I didn't look at with you. Hidden rows, if there are any, hidden worksheets, any invisible content that may be in there will be checked as well. Okay? Now, we're going to go ahead and click on Inspect. And the areas that have the exclamation point in front of them have information in this workbook. There are comments, which you already know that. Document properties, we've already looked at. Headers and footers, I didn't show you that. There were hidden rows and columns in there. But all those that have the red exclamation points are something that you would want to check, okay? Which I know we've already done that. But we're going to go back. We know about the comments. We know about the document properties. Let's look at headers and footers and the hidden rows, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. Go back to the Home tab. And headers and footers, we can look through Print Preview. Go ahead and do that. And notice it says Confidential Pilot Project Report, which you may want to remove that. I don't know if that's really necessary to have that in there, especially if you're going to share it with others. It also said there were some hidden rows. And if you'll notice, the row items 10 through 14 have been hidden. So if you want to look to see what those are, you can unhide those. I'm just going to select 10 through 14, selecting both of those rows. Then I'm going to right click on either one of those highlighted areas, and I'm going to choose Unhide, which is at the bottom of that menu. And now you can see the costs are included in there, which you may or may not want to share with other individuals. So, alright, so now we decide that the rows that were initially hidden should remain displayed, but the headers we want to remove. So we can use the document inspector to remove that item, not only in the header, but I think we're also going to remove the comments. Those don't need to be in there either. So if we go back to the File tab, check for issues again, inspect document. Again, we're going to say yes to that. And then we're going to remove all of the check marks here, except for comments and the headers. Okay, so it says check the documents for that, so it'll check just those two areas because those are the ones that we definitely want to remove. Then we'll choose inspect. We know that those two are in there, so we do want to remove those. We're just clicking the remove all button, and that will remove the headers and footers and also the comments within that document. Okay, and then we can close out of that, go back to the home tab, and you can see the comments are gone. If we show all, there aren't any comments to show. Also, the header that we put in there previously is gone. I'll back out of that. You can see that the header that was originally in the workbook is now deleted. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save that workbook again, and we'll close out of it. Alright, then we'll open up that same workbook. This time though, we're going to save it under a new name, and we'll just put final at the end. What we're going to do is mark this workbook as final so that it can't be changed by anyone else, and also just in the status property it'll indicate that it's been reviewed and no other changes need to be made. So to mark a workbook as final, and if you want to read more about marking a workbook, you can certainly do that at the bottom of page 282. And I just want to make a quick note here. At the bottom of page 282, they also say that an alternative to marking as final is distributing a workbook as a PDF file, because as a PDF file they can only view the information, they can't make changes to the workbook. And a little bit later on I'll show you how that you can save a workbook as a PDF file. So, but to mark as final, to do that you'll go under the File tab, and then in the Permissions group we're going to click on the Protect Workbook. There's an option Mark as Final. Notice here it says let readers know the workbook is final and make it read only, so they can't make any changes to it. And again, they remind you of that. This workbook will be marked as final and then saved. We'll click OK. Editing is complete, final version of the document, blah blah blah. Click OK to that. Notice that change to orange, which is an indicator to you that it has been marked as final. Let's go ahead and go back to the Home tab. You'll notice here also in the ribbon, where the ribbon used to be, you'll notice that it has marked as final. The author has marked this workbook as final to discourage editing. Now you can edit it anyway, but when you make the changes you can't save it under this final name. You'd have to save it under a new name. Okay. Also down in the status bar you'll notice there's an indicator there as well that it has been marked as final. And then let's go back one more time to the File tab, and the Show All Properties on the right hand side, if we click into that, it'll also show you that this particular workbook has been marked as final. And we can go back in here, Advanced Properties. Marked as final is in the Properties area. Okay? So lots of different ways that you can determine whether or not this workbook has been marked as final. Alright, we'll go ahead and close out of that. And the last portion of Project 3 is we're going to take a look at checking a workbook for compatibility issues. So again, if you have created your workbook using Excel 2010 and you're going to pass it on to a user maybe who's using 2003 or earlier, maybe even 2007. There are a few features in 2010 that have been added, but this particular checker will go through and kind of highlight the areas in your worksheet that will not be compatible with those previous versions. So we're going to open up a workbook, again from our Student Data Files folder, and it's called cut rate by lease analysis. And they don't have us saving it under a new name just yet, so we'll wait for that. But to check it for compatibility issues, we're going to go again to the File tab, and in the Prepare for Sharing, we're going to check for issues, and in that drop down menu you'll see Check Compatibility. And then this shows you the various areas. One or more cells in this workbook contain a conditional formatting type that is not supported in earlier versions of Excel, such as data bars, color scales, or icon sets. Okay, and you can find that. If I click on Find, it'll take you to that area in your worksheet. Now I have to go back and do that again, but I wanted you to see that you can immediately get to those if you needed to. Also, some cells contain conditional formatting with the Stop If True option cleared. Early versions of Excel did not recognize this option and will stop after the true condition. Table styles, again, they've added new ones in 2010, so you may not see those in previous versions. So you get the idea. There are actual descriptions of things that you won't find in those previous versions. Now, you can also copy the same information to a new sheet so you can see it a little bit better and make changes as you go if necessary. If you click on Copy to a New Sheet, notice it adds a new sheet called the Compatibility Report Sheet. And again, on all of these, if you wanted to go to that particular area, you can click on it. It takes you to that. Go right back to the Compatibility Report. If you wanted to look for the table style issue, you can click on that link, highlights that in your worksheet. You can make changes to it, whatever you need to do. Great tool of just kind of preparing you for sharing it with other individuals. Now, if you do need to save this sheet as an earlier version, even though you're going to be losing some of the compatibility issues, those individuals with those previous versions will not be able to open up your workbook unless you save it as a previous version for them. Okay? And the reverse is not true. If you try to open a previous version like 2003 or 2007 into 2010, you shouldn't have any problems. Okay, it's just going backwards is where you'll have problems. So you do need to save for them. And one way to do that is if you'll go to the File tab again, choose Save and Send, which I told you this earlier. If you just go to the Save As option and click Save as File Type, you can do this there as well. But they want us to go to Change File Type. The workbook file types appear on the right hand side. You can change it to Excel 97 2003, and you can scroll down here, Save as Type, and you'll get right back to that Save As dialog box where there's a listing of all the file types that you could save to. Okay, and then you just want to make sure that you save it into the appropriate folder. Alright, I'm going to cancel out that. It takes us back to our workbook, and we'll go ahead and stop this project before going on to project 4.